Well, ik hiet oren, daar leef ik piesje oren en chokker en dan roegs, wij heen ze kamer en ik schrijf moeren aange de heen schrijf leeuw en dan in een som en dan nu het hier ze zie ik. Kun je vliegen nog voor een keer te mailen eking. Nu het hier ze keert ik bekijner als ze schreeuwen kedi. Samen de Gerre laat August ga je een blaasje eeuwig. Kokken roeig en een duwel, at een over de gele. Samen te loon je hoors in Tjerave, gra narakkementje stoeske. Gra kollas lein Sheravan, nach ro enemaro angen gundish. Gra kerematich jo kellakach, atien ko maratich garniusi. Snachemtje fuichtisch en anemach. Ach kleefach nidim arúskig. Bekan vinnet in a huurach, bekan huur in a heitje, was in tischalers en kloosets, betrichts moornjorn en dielshin. Grokeel na men voere, maar patolig gaai van schinsrig, en voelig kul ek met an oabit, o de goelat grostrien. Nang wit al het borst die kieten, van gian alles orne sjoulig, kun doel die tilig kushiri, maar beweerling kurneolis. Spulien waarin was een enisch, want de gruime grien titanig. A huicht kattel maar in poenit, snachedig kun gloers in konlag. Ach get huicht geen aardig gieten, faas in a viegen moeren, is er nou niet gaaksin schiener, an leis en lief kan jouwand. Ach get gaak gatoer sin gunje, na fit hundig uitrum oke. Baan an schienig is gach tuvien, snach frikrige hunje en doorstaan. Wel, as a chorgan oren shot an roege tot de deurs die insje, maar goes ne kera met je kokke gebaiet getuurit. Agus an agad reine an a chor an an jorpus na wachke die ulke de halju. Ach kutjach gara nu er ik luch na galik, gra faver aan na shiu. Gra dat aan nach tarig. Is kuth gepaas na bisen. Nu de hoed iat an a sarchif. Skarren met een laighe heinig, grof hoem, en groei is kraan. Is iat kur kaskers naar meeltjene. He had an amazing gift. Ruadh.
Do you know much about his education?
Oh, not really. It was very, very basic. It just be the local school, you know. But obviously the war itself was a great education for them, what they had to go through.
But he must have had the gift of song in his head or in his imagination to have such beautiful...
It's got a nice verse here too. You know how in these days that you know these estates were building up and there was quite a lot of evictions and that going on. And it says, "Gaat een kerken vroeg naar Nouske, gaan online nuiten fasig. Gaat een velen gabber goede, gaat een kudig wonderwane." Could have eaten van goed over. Ik eat go uit een navi. We gaan dat boos geremet. We gaan jaren wat een laat, you know. He's saying, neither goose or snipe and all this sort of, and the deer and the hornless white sheep, which was a new import then, put them in front of the Germans. See sort of what they will do, you know, if they will triumph in Germany and win the victory in arms. And it's a fantastic poem, you know.
And the kind concept behind that
Yes, yes.
is so unorthodox almost.
Yes, yes.
It's just, it makes the poem leap into a different dimension with that idea. Do you remember him?
Yes, vaguely. I didn't know him very well, but he was pretty old when we were going to school, you know. And, it was great anyway that his work was recorded, you know. Well, an dara pársach sé ha mé túlich cíanal túlich. Ha mé túlich cíanal túlich, ha mé túlich cíanal ha mé. Funa chuna mé limhúlan, sealach túsach ma chud vraidin. Gílan géaldach na halappe féun ha maraf is an kláref. Angs an nás ich siet an síneach, an erst san clí an fácal. A luch gran élian tarstan, a luch gran garstan an scarlet. Stúlich liam na chútjif dúskach, sí se luch gran glúnian álin. Ha ma chrí brúd al cíanal, ha ma húl an dianrit traag. Sna chanich mi sív idir níavi, fun a riel a glis a vásjif. Ha lech ban an fluch skur fúrat. Scrúi clúas ac an concharach. Luis getáf id an ócher, stúlich lium an oed a haarsjif. Straum an gatel na hinne fiúrein, chuig a garam sa súntach faaltje. Lim bevian a vinan nam chárach, cúr man gúrst an ór an Gaelic. Chím a rainéle man gúrstjú, crush id an gursuas ag párstjú. Edem an lúiche, an siút ar a scríftje, ian ag einsi gain kun de gake. Chím i broken agus útach, chím i útan agus láven. Nocht an talan a franke, for an de chail mi ma chud verradina.
Yes.
Very, very sad.
Yes. Well, the repetition of Hamidúlich, it opens it on a lament. And he uses repetition very subtly, a little bit, but not too much.
Yes, but seeing all these dead people in the trenches was awful, you know.
Yes.
He talks about their beds being wet and cold and and even covered in water. You know.
Yes, I could understand that.
Nes spik an rámantíoch as an eleván sé gat a seár an gúile hang sé an coci an cuideach a tialaf ba man nágad a chéad réin as a chocu as a tréinsikin. Sé a bhacin a bitúrseach a rún gat géin bás có an ferrimis gan lúi a bhadis búin go brach. Chanel sin ule gachait chóirst mar í an búile fás fer siantan an a blian a sias nach tuk a grían an ást. Ha mis a sias ma húl an ír an chraug ma grían san dál ma gúrach rik mi as a diewi ge tréki mi go tra. Gunnis a hech sin a marachí no íris I go hást is immer slaim go vidig éle nor sléirin biel an lá. An dal léir man gúrstjem na vel an suas an jaul, ek na shells a búlach, chaléir go vuam le keo. Kun chlasnach ek ma chlúsan le fuam a gunna vúd, ach get an oors a crújarm, am a smáintin nich cléotje. He's got a good one too of the night they were sailing for the Somme. An an éile seach man chocus éidir Somme a chaiad an nó laighe me a heol so ékel na grí. An laighe me steach sé an nó bheit drúteach a síleg. Ma mé héin am lain gúst soch me súl fér na gílen. Kut na saie, kut na soin, kut je broeder se brin. Guravatin Kuvi Cruai, soon and Buon Shin Tullig. Had an buker a revial or parading ni Tullig, it tialach of a Hela, who's me hand in a farm villain. Ach maar a hoorspier ga je in a kiet in a willig. Ga je aan alle was er eens, ga je in hier met kumirak. Hoe een arst in eerste years and leef gro krian. San ein manel shies alle kian el anchinia. Es a chlanit gu san ein e commander garlikal. Van a palich siat getrang kumel huil na vatien. Bach fer kuku soul, said cool a chrinek, ac with pellet glas an old, the ule gurech gechrie. That's quite a line.
Yes.
There's sending the bullets over with all the art, which is, you know, across the no man's land. So it was some war anyway. So he was wounded on the Somme himself quite badly, but he recovered to a good degree, and then he got a regiment that wasn't so active. I think it's a West Riding Company in England. So.
Was he? Did he have to come back to Scotland or England?
So. I think so.
For recuperation.
Yes, and then he was in the West Riding Company.
Yes.
It'd be a lesser not sort of frontline duties in there.
Because the Scots were very much in the forefront
there.
As Dominic told us in his talk.
Yeah.
The percentage of Highlanders who were pushed over the top was in excess of any other. Yes.
Aye, well, my own two uncles were killed Donald was killed in Ypres in 11-11-14, and Ian, who was a sergeant at Lewes, in 25-9-15, and they were just more or less a year apart, so it was tough for families,
Yes.
Well, who deal the kicking hands a here trokken ga Tisch vraden maheid waar Dòmhnall ek Ypres aan a negatiefse keerstiek was a 1st Battalion Cameron Highlanders dus een oorzaam na Leon Dish gaat Dòmhnall waar Lewes negatiefse kooktieks when a hardened ek A Company 5th Battalion Cameron Highlanders agus waar Dydyf teolwch na wat a cawl dwynach o cwradach negatiefs 3 ddiget dus dydyf gyharad yn y hynny fedach a hwrw teolwch sy'n angen dwyach yw wat y ffwlwg môr an ach lene nôr sy'n y gogwch go arig yn môr sy'n dwyach yw sy'n ar hyn y seitydd yn as y chogwch Gaharig suich in a dúch go mór. Well, it was so long before my time, this 1914, and all one can do is just surmise what it was like for even my grandmother lived till she was 91. She lived till about 1960, and she had gone through all that, that one can only think of what it was like, But then most families had the same, A lot of them didn't want to dwell on it, so.
So were these?
Because we were so young,
Were the photographs in her house?
Yes.
Were they hung on the wall?
Yes.
So you must have been aware of them.
Oh yes, we were certainly aware of them, and they were in our own home in Kishmurik too. I actually got them reframed myself, but tough time. But then after the war, that's where the land raid started. When the soldiers came back, and they were hardened up by the war, I'm sure. They were ready to raid the land and go to prison. Well, on the hele site in an ocean var geelten is ach met jachat en choku gefeen gat talu ach het en sin diewe challen ik spittig of an ocean a luch gaan a lan heen agus ik an naam was sin var uisje toer eidig skiën ik net onnerig sleetje ach gaat jallig gasen die ferren spittig on the site in an ocean. Wel is dat je weer raar, ze fepprisker is sapati in wat een is aan talle wijns. Hij veel nach kan oorzaken nog gaan viezen en er niet ach megedig han ik de mean in de steden dus kun je gaan ik geruild dus megedig de dus kan ik het de mag na toen ik worden waarschijnlijk dicht dat zo is bij raar. Agus pepperskeri is an kricht in a horste an a site in a virtilig ach an deus sapat voor in a watain agus bod an a bris an kutju heen ach kiesing an a laadju kri a kricht in a vore sjör han usje to pepperskeri sparra for kiesing hasa de moor for a heen ach rein het strivore de hans must do it. Well, you know, Balron and Paperscrew was one big, what they called at the time, a tack, you know, T-A-C-K. It was a big farm, and it was always one of the landlord's own kinsmen who would be the taxman, you know, MacDonald Slate, you know, and he'd stay in a big house in Balronald there. And then he'd have a lot of people working for peanuts there, you know, on the farm, and then when they raided the land, some of them were imprisoned, and the MP and the government eventually relented, and they bought out the big farm, and they broke it into crofts, and that's how you have all these crofts now up that west side, you know, which is probably about the best land in Uist, you know. Well, they went in with a piper ahead of them, and they went up to the big house and told the man in charge that they were taking over the land. Then, of course, he called, I think at one time they even had soldiers and that sort of thing to try to stop it. And but if they hadn't done that, they would never have got it, you know.
No.
Because they were so desperate coming back with nothing after the war.